Gauri, you can read today?
Yes, I will read, Rangada.
Okay, go ahead. Intellectual knowledge.
Intellectual knowledge and practical action are devices of nature by which we are able to express so much of our being, consciousness, energy, power of enjoyment, as we have been able to actualize in our apparent nature, and by which we attempt to know more, express and actualize more, grow always more into the much that we have yet to actualize. But our intellect and mental knowledge and will of action are not our only means, not all the instruments of our consciousness and energy. Our nature, the name which we give to the force of being in us, in its actual and potential play of the play and power, is complex in its ordering of consciousness, complex in its instrumentation of force. Every discovered or discoverable term and circumstance of that complexity which we can get into working order, we need to actualize in the highest and the finest values possible to us and to use in its widest and richest powers for the one object. That object is to be conscious, to increase continually in our realized being and awareness of self and things, in our actualized force and joy of being, and to express that becoming dynamically in such an action on the world and ourselves that we and it shall grow more and always yet more towards the highest possible reach, largest possible breadth of universality and infinity. All man's age-long effort, his action, society, art, ethics, science, religion, all the manifold activities by which he expresses and increases his mental, vital, physical, spiritual existence, are episodes in the vast drama of this endeavor of nature and have behind their limited apparent aims no other true sense or foundation. For the individual to arrive at the divine universality and supreme infinity, live in it, possess it, to be, know, feel, and express that alone in all its being, consciousness, energy, delight of being, is what the ancient seers of the Veda meant by the knowledge. That was the immortality which they set before man as his divine culmination.
Okay, so we'll do one thing. I'll just read the summary and then we'll get back to you. What she said in this paragraph. The instruments given to man to express himself in the world are his body, his vitality, and his mind. These are the three instruments that everybody has. What use you make of them is something else. But in the physical world, these are the instruments. In the spiritual world, these instruments are of no use at all. Okay, you have to use other instruments. Okay? So that they will come to that later. But these are not the only instruments he has. There are other subtler, more powerful, more efficient means hidden within our secret nature. And what are those? Identification, subtle senses, all these are intuition, okay? Higher mind, light, drishti. These are all the instruments that we have in this, hidden within us, but operating only when you go to the second level of the spiritual planes. In the level 1, these instruments are not operating, not when you are identified with your body mind life. These are not the only instruments he has. There are other subtler, more powerful, more efficient means hidden within our secret nature. It is up to man to seek, find, and use these for better, more powerful, and effective action in the world. All the history of man's activities, science, arts, religion, philosophy, is a sign of this seeking. To arrive at divine universality and supreme infinity was a task set for man by the Vedas. This was what was meant by realization of immortality. But also Center is saying knowledge, vidya. The word uses vidya. Vidya doesn't mean intellectual knowledge. Vidya means the knowledge of the self and the knowledge of the psychic being. Chaitya Purusha. Okay? So this is the summary which I have read out, and now I'll go to each sentence. Intellectual knowledge, your mind, and practical action, your vital and your body, are devices of nature by which we are able to express so much of our being, consciousness, energy, power of enjoyment, as we have been able to actualize in our apparent nature. So very clearly, apparent nature means body, mind, life. So the instruments, when you are in the level 1 of your body, mind, life, are these: intellectual knowledge and practical action. Okay? And by which we attempt to know more, express and actualize more, grow always more into the much that we have yet to actualize. What is the much that we have to actualize? The spiritual place of consciousness and even beyond that. Okay? But our intellect and mental knowledge and will of action are not our only means, not all the instruments of our consciousness and energy. Our nature, the name which we give to the force of being in us. Now that's interesting. You must not, when you say nature, it is what the force is doing to you. Okay? Not the Purusha, but the force, the Prakriti. Okay? The nature, force, Prakriti are synonyms. Okay? So don't get confused. Nature, your nature is what the energy in you is doing. Okay? It is creating your body, your mind, and your vital are all created by nature. And nature is Shakti. Shakti which is working at this level. The name of which we give to the force of being in us. See, he adds this phrase to make you understand that nature is nothing but the universal energy taking on an individual energy form. Okay? That is what we become. Because we understand by nature something quite different, but still we are giving a different interpretation. Normally we would say that nature is, okay, he is generous, he is selfish, he is very angry. This is not nature. These are the results of nature. Okay? So it's very interesting only way he is explaining. He adds this, he need not have added at all, but he has added that phrase to make you understand what nature really is. Okay? The name which we give to the force of being in us, in its actual and potential play, actual play and potential play. Your nature at this level is lower nature, but the potential play is the higher nature. You can change your lower nature into a higher nature. Para-prakriti, apara-prakriti. So potential play and power is complex in its ordering of consciousness, complex in its instrumentation of force. It's very complex. Human beings are not simple things. There is a combination of so many things. Mind, vital, and body, material, and also there is an inner mind, inner vital, inner physical. So all these things combine, and on top of that, there is the ego, and there is also the psychic being in you. So all these combinations become infinite combinations. Every discovered or discoverable term and circumstance of this complexity, which we can get into working order, we need to actualize in the highest and finest values possible to us and to use in its widest and richest powers for the one object. And what is that one object? To reach the highest of what you are capable of. Okay? Remember that. The object is discussed very clearly in the previous chapter. The 4 aims of life. It differs for everybody. That's why he's keeping it very general. One object. What is that one object? It depends on the individual. You have to develop, and it's common. Everybody has to develop himself according to his own nature. Okay? He is not saying the one object is to reach God. Yesterday we discussed that. No? Everybody is not fit to reach God. But they can always have an object, an aim in life. You remember Mother's Science of Living? She says, an aimless life is a miserable life. But depending on the quality of the aim will depend the quality of the life. So that's why Swami is keeping it very general for one object. That object will be many for different people. Now, but the highest what it is, he explained, that object is to become, to be conscious, to increase continually in our realized being and awareness of self and things, in our actualized force and joy of being, and to express that becoming dynamically in such an action on the world and ourselves that we and it shall grow more and always yet more towards the highest possible reach, largest possible breadth of universality and infinity. Again, here he has kept it very general. You can see each one has to develop himself to the best of his ability. Okay? It's very interesting how he is so accurate with his words. All man's age-long effort, his action, society, art, ethics, science, religion, all the manifold activities by which he expresses and increases his mental, vital, physical, spiritual existence are episodes in the vast drama of this endeavor of nature and have behind their limited apparent aims, there again, see, very clear, apparent limited aims. All the aims that you have, including the worldly aims and also the spiritual aims, they are relatively limited. They are limited apparent aims. No other true sense or foundation. Progress is the watchword of what he's saying. Everybody has to progress at their own level and capacity. For the individual to arrive at the divine universality and supreme infinity, live in it, possess it, to be, know, feel, and express that alone in all his being, consciousness, energy, delight of being, is what the ancient seers in the Veda meant by the knowledge. That is what he meant by Vidya. What is so? Swami's definition is very clear. What is Vidya? Vidya is to know your true being, yourself and your psychic being. That is Vidya. But more than the psychic being, the self. That gives you knowledge. The realization of the psychic does not necessarily give you spiritual knowledge. It gives you a power of purification. You get purified, and after the purification is over, you can rise to the self and get spiritual knowledge. That was the immortality which is set before man as his divine culmination. So each man has to progress at his own rate, but ultimately he has to get Vidya. Vidya means he has to get the knowledge of his own true individual, which is himself and the psychic. Okay. The chapter, he has given you the aims of life in the earlier chapter, and this chapter, God and so the transcendent, the universal, and the individual. That's the progress to knowledge. God, man, and nature. So God is the transcendent, nature is the universal, and man is the individual. So he has to get knowledge of all the three. Then that's his aim in life, according to Swami. Okay? Because of others, according to others, not necessarily. You can go to realize the divine in yourself, that would be man. You can realize the divine in the transcendent, that would be God. And realize the divine in nature, that would be that pantheism. So, but Swami wants all the three to have Vidya. Okay, so I now We can go to the next 7. Intellectual knowledge we have just read, but I did only read. I read a summary. I'll quickly go through. I think we just read it, no? Yeah, we read it. So we'll go to the next paragraph. But by the nature of his mentality. So who will read today? Sunki read just now. Archana Ji, can you?
Rangada, I can read.
Okay.
Yes, Rangada.
Gitanjali can read if she's got the text. Go ahead.
But by the nature of his mentality, by his in-look into himself and his outlook on the world, by his original limitation in both thought sense and body to the relative, the obvious and the apparent, man is obliged to move step by step and at first obscurely and ignorantly in this immense evolutionary movement. It is not possible for him to envisage being at first in the completeness of its unity. It presents itself to him through diversity, and his search for knowledge is preoccupied with three principal categories which sum up for him all its diversity: himself, man or individual soul, God, and nature. The first is that of which alone he is directly aware in his normal ignorant being. He sees himself, the individual, separate apparently in its existence, yet always inseparable from the rest of being, striving to be sufficient, yet always insufficient to itself, since never has it been known to come into existence or to exist or to culminate in its existence apart from the rest, without their aid and independently of universal being and universal nature. Secondly, there is that which he knows only indirectly by his mind and bodily senses and its effects upon them, yet must strive always to know more and more completely. For he sees also this rest of being with which he is so closely identified and yet from which he is so separate. The cosmos, world, nature, other individual existences from whom he perceives as always like himself and yet always unlike, for they are the same in nature, even to the plant and the animal, and yet different in nature. Each seems to go its own way, to be a separate being, and yet each is impelled by the same movement and follows in its own grade the same vast curve of evolution as himself. Finally, he sees or rather divines something else which he does not know at all except quite indirectly, for he knows it only through himself and that at which his being aims, through the world and that at which it seems to point and which it is either striving obscurely to reach and express by its imperfect figures, or at least founds them without knowing it on their secret relation to that invisible reality and occult infinite.
So in this para, he is discussing the three things that we just now discussed: the transcendent, the cosmic, and the individual. I am reading each sentence. But by the nature of his mentality, by his in-look into himself and his outlook on the world, so he has to look into himself and his outlook on the world by his original limitation in both through sense and body to the relative, the obvious and the apparent. So what is this relative, obvious and apparent? The physical world. It is relative and it's obvious to you that this seems to be the reality, but it's the apparent actually, it's not the reality. Man is obliged to move step by step and at first obscurely and ignorantly in this immense evolutionary movement. The evolution is not only individual, but the whole of the universe, the whole of manifestation is slowly evolving. It's an immense, and he is participating in this evolution of nature. But he is a kingpin, okay? He is very, very important to the evolution. It is he that makes the evolution go faster. He has said that very clearly elsewhere. Okay. step by step, and first obscurely and ignorantly, in this immense evolutionary movement. It is not possible for him to envisage being or envisage. You can also pronounce it in say that's French pronunciation, envisager. To envisage or envisage yourself being at first in the completeness of its unity. It's not possible for him to go to the level 2 and experience the oneness of things, not in the beginning. It presents itself to him through diversity. So the level 2 is the oneness, but he has to first experience it in the level 1, which is diversity, the many, okay, multiplicity. That's what he said. It presents itself to him through diversity. He uses different words, but the truth is always simple. But when he uses different words, you understand how he uses them, and you have to relate his language to the actuality. Okay? So diversity is a place where there are dualities, and that is level 1. Okay? So it is not possible for him to envisage being at first in the completeness of its unity. Not possible for normal man to become spiritual and rise to level 2. It presents itself to him through diversity, and his search for knowledge is preoccupied with 3 principal categories which sum up for him all its diversity. Himself, man or individual soul, God and nature. So himself is the individual, God transcendent, and nature the universe. The first is that of which alone he is directly aware in his normal ignorant being. You are aware of your own existence in the physical world. He sees himself, the individual, separate apparently in its existence, yet always inseparable from the rest of being. Striving to be sufficient, yet always insufficient to itself. So we'll stop here and look at what he's saying. You are dependent on the universe for your existence. The existence is giving you everything that you have. It is giving you senses, it is giving you the instruments, it is giving you your food, your clothes, everything. You cannot exist by yourself alone in the universe, not possible. You need your doctor, you need your lawyer, you need your teacher, you need your parents, you need everything. You need your servants. You depend on the universe. The first is that of which alone he is directly aware in his normal ignorant being. He sees himself, the individual, separate apparently in his existence, yet always inseparable from the rest of being. Striving to be sufficient. You are trying to be independent of everybody else, yet always insufficient to itself. You can never be fully sufficient to yourself in the world. But when you go to the spiritual planes of consciousness, you see that the self is self-dependent, okay? Self-existent. It doesn't depend on anybody else. So that's the difference he's making between level 1 and level 2. Okay? Yet always inseparable from the rest of being, striving to be sufficient, yet always insufficient to itself, since never has it been known to come into existence or to exist or to culminate in his existence apart from the rest. So, always he has been, his progress is always in the universe. Individually, he cannot progress. It's not possible for him. Okay? Without the rest, without the others. Without their aid and independently of universal being and universal nature. This big sentence, what he's saying, he is telling you very clearly that evolution, movement upwards, ascent of consciousness is possible only in the physical world, nowhere else. That's why you're dependent on it. If your being realizes the soul and goes to the second level of existence, which is spiritual planes, you can remain there. But 90% of the time, you will not be evolving. There's no evolution there because it is static. These are typal words. Okay? That's what he's pointing out. So you can never progress apart from the rest, without their aid and independently of universal being and universal nature. So what's the meaning by universal being and universal nature? Universal being is Chit and universal nature is Shakti. Chit Shakti. So that's why he's going on saying these things. He's not using words uselessly. Okay? Secondly, there is that which he knows only indirectly by his mind and bodily senses and its effects upon them. So what do we know indirectly? We have discussed the 4 types of knowledge. Okay, so indirectly, when he is knowing indirectly, he is using his gross senses. He is using the physical senses. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue and skin. Okay, he is using these indirectly. Why? Because the senses are coming between you and what you want to know. Okay? You cannot know anything outside yourself without the senses. If the senses are not there in you, you will never come to know the universe. Okay? Secondly, there is that which he knows only indirectly by his mind and bodily senses. The mind is the one that interprets the senses, and therefore that's called the manas. So it's actually called the king sense, the main sense. Okay? The bodily senses are only supplying data to the mind. Note interestingly how all the senses, they collect the data from the physical world, whether it be sight, sound or smell or taste and touch, and send them all with nerves. The nerves are the communication between the senses and the brain. All the nerves take the data and supply to the brain, and the brain is interpreting what you're seeing, what you're not seeing or hearing. Okay? There is that which he knows only indirectly by his mind and bodily senses and its effect upon them. Yet must strive always to know more and more completely. Even in science, they realize that you have to go beyond your senses. Okay? So that is there, and finally you go even to the spiritual planes. There you start using different senses. You use subtle senses. For he sees also this rest of being with which he is so closely identified and yet from which he is so separate. So what is the rest of being? Rest of being is the world outside you, the universe or the environment. For he sees also this rest of being. You are there and the rest of being is there, and that is, he is so closely identified and yet from which he is so separate. The cosmos, world, nature. Other individual existences whom he perceives as always like himself and yet always unlike. All men are essentially the same and yet each one has got his own character. Okay? For they are the same in nature, even to the plant and the animal, and yet different in nature. Even in one species, all are similar in a particular way, but all are different again in their nature. Each seems to go its own way, to be a separate being, and yet each is impelled by the same movement and follows in its own grade the same vast curve of evolution as himself. Everybody is progressing at their own level and different way. Finally, he sees or rather divines something else which he does not know at all except quite indirectly. The word divines, you must not get confused. The word divine means guess. Okay? We say deviner is the word in French and it means having a vague idea. Okay? Finally, he sees or rather divines. Okay? He guesses. He necessarily does not see. He guesses something else which he does not know at all except quite indirectly. And what is that? The divine, the God, the transcendent. So first he knows himself. That was the previous para. In this para, he is saying that you come to know the world in your own, with your own limited instrumentation. And finally, he starts realizing that there is a third element, which is a transcendental, call it God or whatever you want. Okay? Divine something else which he does not know at all, except quite indirectly. For he knows it only through himself. And that at which his being aims through the world and that at which it seems to point, and which is either striving obscurely to reach and express by its imperfect figures, or at least founds them without knowing it on their secret relation to that invisible reality and authenticity. So, basically, he first realizes himself, that also very imperfectly, then he realizes that he is linked to the physical world, and then finally, not immediately in one life, it may be in many lives. Okay. Finally, he realizes that there is something beyond himself and the universe, and there is God. Now we come to the next para, which is the third and unknown, the tertium quid, which he names God. So, one of you has to read. What is the time? 31. We have got 9 minutes. We can read the time. So, Archana, yeah,
Shall
read.
I read?
Yes, I'm reading.
Okay, any one of you.
Yes, we'll continue.
Go ahead.
This third and
Yes, yes,
unknown,
go ahead.
this tertium,
Tertium quid.
what happened?
No, go ahead.
No, it's, oh, he names God, and by the word he means somewhat or someone who is the supreme, the divine, the cause, the all. One of these things or all of them at once. Perfection or the totality of all, that here is partial or imperfect. The absolute of all this myriad relativities, the unknown, by learning of whom the rest secret of the known can become to him more and more intelligible. Man has tried to deny all these categories. He has tried to deny his own real existence. He has tried to deny the real existence of the cosmos. He has tried to deny the real existence of God. But behind all denials, we see the same constant necessity of his attempt at knowledge. For he feels the need of arriving at a unity of these three terms, even if it can only be done by suppressing two of them or merging them in the other that is left. To do that, he affirms only himself as the cause and all the rest as mere creations of his mind, or he affirms only nature and all the rest as nothing but phenomena of nature energy, or he affirms only God, the absolute, and all the rest as no more than illusions through that trust upon itself or on us by an inexplicable Maya. None of these denials can wholly satisfy, none solves the entire problem or can be indisputable and definitive. Least of all, the one to which his sense-governed intellect is most prone, but in which he can never persist for long. The denial of God is a denial of his true quest and his own supreme ultimate. The ages of naturalistic atheism have always been short-lived because they can never satisfy the secret knowledge in man that cannot be the final Veda because it does not correspond with the Veda within which all mental knowledge is laboring to bring out. From the moment that this lack of correspondence is felt, a solution, however skillful it may be and however logically complete, has been judged by the eternal witness in man and is doomed. It cannot be the last word of knowledge.
Okay, so we can go through quickly. We have 5 minutes. We'll try and finish. This third and unknown, this tertium quid. Okay? The third unknown. Okay? The tertium quid is the word given to, he names God. Something the third level. Okay? The third level. That's why I go on speaking of the levels. He is very clearly also mentioning the levels. He names God. Okay, you can call it God, Bhagwan, whatever you want. because he is only guessing. Okay? Even that guessing part, Shakespeare is explaining very clearly now. And by the word, he means somewhat or someone. Somewhat is the impersonal and someone is the personal, who is the supreme, the divine, the cause, the all. One of these things or all of them at once, depending on the individual and his way of conceiving of God. The perfection or the totality of all that is here, partial or imperfect. In the physical world, everything is partial and imperfect, but you think that God is all these things put together, plus, 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 plus. Okay? This plus this plus this plus this. But very clearly he says elsewhere that God is not a summation. He is much more than the sum of things. So, unknown by learning. No, sorry. Now, all these things or all of them at once, the perfection or the totality of all that is here, partial or imperfect, the absolute of all these myriad relativities. Everything is relativity and myriad, that is the many. So, myriad relativities, clearly level 1, where there is relativity, and there is also the many. Myriad means many. The unknown, by learning of whom the real secret of the known can become to him more and more intelligible. There is something which will explain both cosmos and the individual man. Man has tried to deny all these categories. We'll see each one. He has tried to deny his own real existence. So his own real existence is the materialistic way of seeing things. You are a product of matter. So you are not anything at all. Only you have been produced by matter, and matter will again dissolve you. So that he denies his own existence. Okay? He has tried to deny the real existence of the cosmos. That is the Buddhistic view or the Mayavadic view. The world is unreal. He has tried to deny the real existence of God, all the three. And who is doing this? Again, the materialist. Okay? There is no God. But even the spiritual man sometimes says there is no God. Okay? Buddhism, Jainism, and many others also, even the Jiddu Krishnamurti and also the Sadguru, they say there is no God, visual conception. We have mental conception. There are planes of, impersonal planes of vastness, power, in knowledge, okay, Ananda, but there is no personal God. So, but behind all these denials, we see the same constant necessity of his attempt at knowledge. He is going on trying to get knowledge. This is the main difference between the Indian culture and the Western or other religions. The other religions assume that they know, okay, and they insist that you must follow. Okay? So, Christianity also therefore tries to spread their own religion by proselytizing, okay, by spreading Christianity, and the Muslims also do that. The Christians do that by persuasion, and the Muslims do that by the sword. Okay, so that's it. They force you to convert. But in India, everyone is allowed to search. You are searching for knowledge. You don't have the knowledge. You have the humility to say that we don't have the knowledge. We are only searching for knowledge. So each one is allowed to do in his own way. We see the same constant necessity of the attempt at knowledge, for he feels the need of arriving at a unity of these three terms, even if it can only be done by suppressing two of them and merging them in the other that is left. So, there will be some people who will say, that God is the only reality. If you are a bhakti, follower of the bhakti yoga, if you are a jnani, you will say God is the only the impersonal. There is nothing else. So this is how each one is going according to his own, and the three terms come into existence in your imagination: the transcendent, the universal, and the individual. To do that, he affirms only himself as cause and all the rest is mere creations of his mind. Or he affirms only nature and all the rest is nothing but phenomena of nature, energy. That's a pantheism theory. Or he affirms only God, the absolute, and all the rest as no more than illusions which that thrusts upon itself and on us by an inexplicable Maya. This is the Advaita philosophy in its narrower application. Okay? The Advaita philosophy says that's the only reality, the rest is all unreal. Okay? Or at least temporarily unreal. None of these denials can wholly satisfy. None solves the entire problem or can be indisputable and definitive. What is the problem? The problem is, wow, is there God? Is the universe? Who is created the universe? And from where am I come? So these are the problems that you have to solve. Are the three connected? These are the three problems that you have to solve. Least of all, the one to which is sense-governed intellect. Note the word sense-governed intellect. Physical senses are gathering the information and sending to your intellect, but in which it can never persist for long. Your idea of all these things cannot persist for long. This is exactly what he said in the Life Divine, very first chapter itself. He says, the denial of God, okay, the idea of God, life, freedom, immortality is denied and banished. But after banishing, it always comes back. It comes back with a vengeance. Okay. Note what happened in in Russia. For 75 years, they did not believe in God, but it came back with a bang. Okay. So this is what he said. However much you banish God, he will always keep coming back. Okay. They said that elsewhere. Now he is saying in a different way. None of these denials can wholly satisfy. None solve the problem entire problem, or can be indisputable and definite. Least of all, the one to which his sense-governed intellect is most prone. But which is that? The materialism. Least of all to the one which is sense-governed intellect is most prone, that's a materialistic view. But in which it can never persist for long. The denial of God is a denial of his true quest and his own supreme ultimate. The ages of naturalistic atheism have always been short-lived because they can never satisfy the secret knowledge in man. That cannot be the final Veda. The Veda, same they use the word Veda for the ultimate knowledge. The Sanskrit term is Ved, you know. And so final Veda means the final knowledge. Because it does not correspond with the Veda within which all mental knowledge is laboring to bring out. From the moment that this lack of correspondence is felt, a solution, however skillful it may be, and however logically complete, has been judged by the eternal witness in man and is doomed. It cannot be the last word of knowledge. What cannot be the last word of knowledge? Any one experience, either God or universe or individual. So that's what it's saying. I have gone 4 minutes past the 8:40 limit. Okay. Next we'll take up man as he is not sufficient to himself. Srivna is mentioning all this because all these theories have been there. Okay. But Srivna wants all the three. Unless you know all the three, not sequentially, but simultaneously. If you don't know all the three simultaneously, you will never know the final truth. The final truth you will know only when all the three are acknowledged and experienced simultaneously at the same time. Okay? So, I cut the link. Each one can now.
Thank you, Rangada.
Rangada.
Okay, au revoir everybody.
Thank you, Rangada.
Over.